Well, we all know how important computers are in our lives, and it's not just our lives. Criminals also they use computers for a lot of things. Now, generally, crimes done specifically with computers are not that violent, but often evidence of violent crimes is found on computers. So it really pays for us to try to understand more about how a computer works, so we can understand more about computer forensics. Fact is, computers are used, especially in the civilized world, uh, they're everywhere. They're used by everyone. Everyone puts data on them, whether they know they're putting it on it or not. So computers can hold a lot of evidence. Also, when we see what people wrote on the computers, we can realize that wait, these are people of interest, people who we might suspect of the crime, but we have no reason to believe that they did the crime because they have absolutely no motive. But when we look at their computers, we might find some hatred, let's say, between this person of interest and the victim. So a computer can actually enable us to solve crimes if we can utilize the information in the computer. And there are sometimes the computer itself, the usage of the computer itself, is a crime. So we have to study the computer and analyze the computer in order to solve the crime, in order to stop the crime. Anyway, I mean, the examples where the computer itself is a crime is what they call hacking, like intruding into other computers using your own computer. Also, purchasing drugs are done on a computer, and again, this is how the computer shows evidence of another crime being done. But the idea is sometimes there are certain films that are, I believe, forbidden to be watched on a computer. Snuff films are films where the actors actually kill other actors. It's a saddening thing, but people are entertained by real death. So there are people out there who I'm assuming they capture these people and they show real film of an actual execution of these people. Not as an actor, but these people are real people who are deliberately, killed, and they film it, and people like to watch that. So I believe this is forbidden, certainly forbidden to sell, and it might very well be forbidden to watch. And so in that case, if it's watched on a computer, as it usually is, that in itself is a crime. So in that case, that's a situation where a computer itself is used for a crime. By the way, a little bit of advice: there is something called the dark web. I've never really seen it, at least not the way it's usually depicted. But advice that was given to me, and I'm giving to you, is that don't really go on the dark web too much. You're going to see some really horrifying things. The dark web is usually hidden from other people. It's not easy to get into some of the illegal stuff they do on the dark web, but try to avoid using the dark web all that much, because inevitably, if you use it enough, you will inevitably come to some horrifying things. The snuff films are one of the things you might see that can horrify you. Anyway, the idea is that when you have a computer and you need to find evidence on it, the key is understanding the computer and knowing how to find the evidence and how to find it, where it might be, and how to retrieve it. So we're going to first try to understand a little bit more about the computer in order to understand where this evidence might be hiding. Some of the obvious things: the hardware is the physical part, software are the instructions that's in the memory of the computer that enables the things to show up on the screen. For example, input: these are the instructions given to computer by a person. Maybe you can type them in with a keyboard. You can use the mouse to click on things to tell the computer to do things. Even a gaming controller, that is input. You can use a gaming controller to get certain things done on a computer, even if it's only in a game. Output is the computer telling you what it has and what you might want to know. The screen is the obvious one. The printer is another one. Even speakers. It's an output. It might not be visual. It might be auditory, but it's still a form of output. Also, you probably know this, that the memory the computer uses is divided into the ROM and the RAM. ROM is read-only memory. That is permanent. It's saved on the computer in some way. Turn off the computer, it will still be there. unless you deliberately remove it. But anyway, RAM, that's the random access memory. That's what the computer is buzzing and clicking away with while you're staring at the screen. It's constantly being being used and worked with, but it's completely useless for any, let's say, another session. So the RAM is memory the computer is using, it's working with, but it's lost whenever the computer is turned off. RAM can be very valuable because, I mean, for example, we want to know what the person was doing. Now, if we turn off, let's say we catch the person with the computer, we want to know what the computer has been doing. So, and if we turn it off, we'll lose all that. We might get some of the saved stuff, but the RAM that he was using possibly in a criminal way will be lost. So we'll deal with this a little bit more later, how to get information from the RAM and why it's so important. So let's start off with what a computer starts off with. You turn it on. Okay, you turn it on. It does this thing called procedure called booting up. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, the on signal. Electricity goes into the part of the computer that tells it it's on. The current goes to the CMOS. That's they call it a complementary metal oxide semiconductor. It's a chip. It's found on the motherboard. That is, it's hardware. It's if you open up your computer, it's that big greenish thing with all the metal parts on it. If you don't know what you're doing, just don't touch that thing. It's got all the stuff that's really necessary for the computer's internal workings to work with and to operate on and with. Anyway, so it's this thing it's like hardwired. It's right into the motherboard. This chip contains a special memory that gives an instruction of starting the system, because that's what you're doing. The signal goes to CMOS to tell it to start the system. So you have special ROM that tells it what to do further to start the system. So these instructions are called the BIOS, the basic input-output system. That's what their instructions are called for whatever reason. So they tell the computer, to start working, meaning just check the monitor, keyboard, do some basic self-tests. These things, by the way, they can be configured by the user. For example, you have more than one hard drive. You might tell it to use one instead of the other, or to get information from one instead of the other. All kinds of different things. A real computer expert would know all about this. By the way, when we start it up, it will start using RAM because it's working, and this can actually ruin other RAM evidence. But we'll see about this, why that might be later. The information and instructions that, again, as the computer is humming around and clicking around and sending signals here and there, where they go and how things are transferred back and forth are managed through what they call a system bus. We're not really going to talk much about that. But in the end, after all these self-tests and all this preparatory work is finished, the final act of the BIOS is to start Windows or some other operating system, like whatever. I mean, Windows is very popular. It's the most popular. You might have the Apple operating system. You might use Linux or Unix or something like that. But there's some kind of operating system that enables the user to work with a computer very easily. So when they start that, usually people use applications in order to get the computer to do what they want. Microsoft Word is a typical application, and the way they work is you put your input into it. Let's say you type on your keyboard, and the computer